Good evening, everyone. My name is Chad Brecklin. I want to welcome you all to a listening session here in regards to Metro Transit's proposed route adjustments based upon their network redesign. I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. Regrettably, Mayor Richardson was unable to attend tonight, but we do have our council president, Randy Udell, is here to listen to feedback and to what Metro has to say. I also want to thank Andrew McFadden here to my left. He is one of our transportation engineers who has been our point of contact with Metro throughout the entire redesign process. He's very dialed in, so to speak, as it relates to the proposed route changes and their impact on Fitchburg and what will soon be Fitchburg here in the Southdale neighborhood. So he's been working very closely with Metro. He was able to help me get this meeting set up. We also want to thank our community members here at Doxa Church for allowing us to use this facility. It's a really nice facility, as many of you can see, and it's great to have a location here in Southdale where we can have neighborhood meetings like this. So thank you for the reminder. Does anyone need Spanish translation at all? Okay, just maybe people who are viewing online? All right, we'll go ahead and, my apologies for speaking so long.
Okay, are we ready?
So, can I introduce this gentleman? Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew. Who is it? Oh, it's Daniel. So I will introduce Daniel. He's from Madison Metro, correct? So he will talk about some of the proposed route changes and share background on the process to this point, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers.
Sorry, my mistake. Just to clarify, so Daniel's our Spanish interpreter. Daniel, if you could just summarize a little bit of what our administrator said, just to kind of orientate folks at home.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a nuestra reunión. Nos encontramos hoy para hablar acerca del rediseño del sistema de metro y en particular los cambios en el vecindario de Southdale. Yo me llamo Daniel y estoy disponible para contestar preguntas al fin.
Thank you, Daniel. So Daniel's going to be helping out interpreting for us, for our Spanish speakers. And I also want to thank Fact TV for setting up. I mean, they did such a great job moving and so impressive. So thank you. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly kind of go over the background of kind of how we got to now. I know these are never, I feel like it always feels like these are rushed and it's like, we need a decision tomorrow, And so I just want to make sure everybody's kind of oriented towards, what went into this so far. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike Chikvala from Madison Metro to really get into the nuts and bolts. But just really briefly, you can kind of see here, this is a slide that I took from our Council of the Whole meeting. And really this just shows, so kind of starting in early 2021, staff in Metro started talking through some initial discussions, and we've had a number of outreach events, specifically, mainly oriented towards Fitchburg, existing Fitchburg residents, but we also, as recently as March 28th, held a meeting at City Hall, but we had satellite locations just to try to get some more feedback from residents, specifically one up here at Southdale. So there were a few opportunities, and just to kind of walk through some of the choices and alternatives. Daniel, I don't know if you want me to pause there just to quickly do a synopsis of that.
Sí, hoy hablaremos acerca del rediseño del sistema. Queremos intentar mejorar la provisión de nuestros servicios y esperamos recibir feedback hoy en la reunión.
Thank you, Daniel. And so Mike will definitely give an overview of kind of how they got to now pretty briefly, because I know you've probably all seen this and there's a lot of material out there. So feel free to watch this presentation that we did on March 28th. They did a great job of really explaining the process. But then we'll also just kind of, at the end of Mike's discussion, talk about next steps and kind of both the city of Fitchburg, including Southdale, and the Madison Metro approval process over the next month. Daniel, you want to hit that? And then Mike, do you want to take it away?
Todos los comentarios de hoy estarán tomados en cuenta dentro del próximo mes en cuanto Metro decide las propuestas finales para el rediseño.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. Welcome everybody to the Transit Network Redesign Southdale Neighborhood Public Transit Meeting. This is all review and covered, but my name is Mike Chekvala. I'm the project manager with Metro Transit for the project. You've heard from Andrew McFadden from the city, as well as Daniel interpreting for us. Go ahead, Daniel.
Ok, solo queremos introducirnos. El manager del proyecto será Mike Chekvala, el representante de la ciudad de Fitchburg, Andrew McFadden, y yo, el representante bilingüe de Metro Transit.
The Transit Network Redesign is a project to redesign the route system in a way that better meets the needs of Madison area residents and businesses. We have a website there, mymetrobus.com/redesign. There you'll find a lot of the information that I'm presenting today, as well as previous presentations and further reports and analysis.
Como ya he dicho, estamos aquí para hablar sobre el rediseño del sistema. Hay más información disponible en mymetrobus.com/redesign y allí podrás encontrar enmiendas a las propuestas.
This is our
conference in English.
This is our pre-COVID transit network. So this is what we're redesigning with the project. So as you can see, the existing transit network or the pre-COVID transit network was largely designed around the 4 transfer points. It has a lot of overlapping routes. There was a handful of commuter routes that kind of bypassed the transfer point system, providing service directly into the downtown area. Some of that service and some of the service shown was discontinued in 2020 in response to the COVID pandemic. But at any rate, this is what we're talking about with the transit network. We're talking about where the routes go and also how frequently they run. Go ahead, Danielle. Uh-oh, did we lose Daniel? Or did we lose me? Keep going, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. I think Daniel froze, so I think if you just want to keep moving on.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, I think we'll just continue on here, and yeah, we'll hopefully we'll get him back. Okay, so moving on. Why are we doing this project now? So there are a couple of reasons we're doing the transit network redesign now. One is to address long-standing issues and discrepancies, primarily people who have long travel times, particularly in peripheral neighborhoods. Just a lot of waiting for the bus service that takes a very long time to get anywhere, transfers at the transfer points and so forth. Secondly, as we recovered from the COVID pandemic, we'd like to recover in a way that reflects future needs and future travel demands. And finally, we have a separate project, Bus Rapid Transit. So we'd like to plan for Bus Rapid Transit and not have routes that duplicate Bus Rapid Transit, but instead have routes that complement Bus Rapid Transit. and then also bring some of those benefits of frequency and travel times to neighborhoods that are not on the BRT route. Daniel, it looks like you're back.
¿Y por qué ahora Metro ha decidido cambiar el sistema? Pues es para atender problemas ya existentes y reducir brechas en servicio en diferentes partes de la ciudad. También hay necesidad de recuperar servicios después de la pandemia y mejorar los servicios para el futuro. Y finalmente queremos complementar el nuevo servicio de BRT o transportes rápidos y para reducir las rutas indirectas.
So looking at the map, the red line here will be our first bus rapid transit line serving the east-west corridor, Mineral Point Road, University Avenue, and East Washington. We're also planning for a second bus rapid transit line, the north-south green line. Here, both of those routes will have frequent service on them and form kind of the core of the new transit system. We're also planning for a third bus rapid transit line that ultimately goes west towards Middleton. So the transit network redesign encompasses basically all of the transit service area outside of the BRT line. It includes the service planning for the north-south bus rapid transit line, the Middleton bus rapid transit line, as well as pretty much every other route in the system.
El rediseño se enfoca en las áreas fuera del corredor de BRT. El corredor de BRT se consiste de las 3 líneas que se piensan instalar en el futuro, comenzando con la línea roja que va de el oeste hacia el East Town Mall y próximamente habrá una línea verde que va del norte al sur y la línea azul que se dirigirá para Middleton. Hoy nos vamos a enfocar en el área verde al sur de la ciudad.
So thinking about what transit service is doing for us, there's largely 2 competing goals for transit service. One goal that we're trying to accomplish is the ridership goal. Get as many people on the bus, have bus service that's attractive compared to other modes like driving your car. In order to accomplish that, we do a map that looks like this fictional map on top with the red lines. We have fewer routes that are more direct and on the busier streets. Because we have fewer routes, we can have more buses on each route, and so the frequency is better on the routes. The second competing goal is the coverage goal. And the coverage goal says we want to provide some level of service to as many people as possible. That is kind of shown with this fictional map on the bottom with the green lines. To achieve the maximum coverage, we have more routes going more places and in and out of neighborhoods. But the outcome of that is that we have more routes, so we have fewer buses on each route, and the frequency is not as good. So we spent the first half of this project asking the public as well as policymakers and stakeholders where on this coverage to ridership spectrum we should be with the project.
Estas son 2 metas fundamentales para los transportes públicos. Una de las metas en que estamos pensando es el número de usuarios y se concentra en proveer servicios en pocas rutas, pero con servicio más frecuente. Y la segunda meta será la meta de cobertura, que pretende extender servicio a la mayor cantidad de personas sin pensar tanto en la frecuencia. Se puede ver que en el gráfico a la derecha en rojo, con los 20 autobuses, se puede ver que podemos poner más servicio más frecuente, pero con 20 autobuses en un sistema como en verde, se ve que no se puede dar mucha frecuencia.
And the answer that we got after that round of outreach was that we should be moving in the ridership direction. but not completely, not to the full extreme of the ridership end of that spectrum. So we should be moving in the direction of having fewer routes, more direct service, and higher frequency service, but still retaining some part of our service to reach a few more places than we would under the pure ridership scenario. And that's what we're trying to accomplish now with the second half of the project.
Y ya después de varias reuniones públicas, se ha decidido que Metro se enfocará en aumentar el número de usuarios y proveer más servicios más frecuentes.
So this is where we are now. This is the draft plan. So as the name implies, this is a plan, a draft plan that we're starting from and that we're trying to make changes to and move it in the direction of becoming the final plan, which it isn't yet, but it's a starting point for us to work with. I'll walk you through a few aspects of this plan. So firstly, the red lines on the map indicate the color of the lines indicates the frequency of the service during the most of the weekday. So the red lines are routes that run every 15 minutes, and the blue lines are routes that run every 30 minutes. So you can see we have a good amount of frequent service throughout kind of the majority of the central Madison here on the isthmus, as well as the two bus rapid transit lines, Route A running east to west and Route B running north to south. The remaining routes predominantly run every 30 minutes. So we have these routes in the periphery that run every 30 minutes. You can see generally there are fewer routes, but they run more frequently. You can see that there are no transfer points. Instead, we have people making transfers where the routes more naturally cross each other so that we don't have as much indirection in the routes to go serve the transfer points. We also have a handful of routes X, Y, and Z and 75 and 55 that only run during peak periods. And Daniel, if you need me to repeat any of that, just let me know.
Este es el borrador inicial de Metro. Aún no se ha finalizado, pero hoy estamos para discutir algunas enmiendas al borrador. Les dirijo su atención a los colores del mapa. Las rutas rojas tendrán servicio cada 15 minutos. Las líneas azules tendrán servicio cada 30 minutos y también se ve que hay líneas en gris que pasarán solo en horas picos.
Okay, so focusing in on Fitchburg and the Southdale neighborhood, I'll walk you through some of these routes. We have Route B will be the north-south bus rapid transit line running every 15 minutes on Park Street, Badger, and Fish Hatchery Road. We then have Route G east of there, largely replacing Route 16 with service every 30 minutes. Route G and Route H will be connected, so they will form one continuous route. It'll be two routes, but the bus will continue. So a westbound bus will be Route G and then continue as Route H. And an eastbound bus will be Route H and will continue as Route G. We have Route 75, the rush hour only service going to Verona and Epic. And then we have Route Z coming down Rimrock Road towards Lacey and East Sherrill, largely replacing the Route 44. Sorry, Route 49.
Aquí nos enfocamos en el área sur de la ciudad. Vemos que las líneas H y G reemplazarán la ruta 16 por la mayor parte. Se consistirá de una línea, pero con una parada en Badger Road, cerca de Fish Hatchery. También habrá la ruta B, que correrá desde cada 15 minutos del sur hacia el Capitolio de la ciudad. Ah, hablaremos más sobre algunas propuestas para la ruta G en algunos momentos.
Okay, so the overall service levels on Route G will be higher than Route 16 in that we will upgrade the times when the Route 16 is currently hourly. Route G will instead be every 30 minutes all the time. So evenings and weekends, instead of the service being hourly, it will be every 30 minutes. And then Route Z will go through the area and serve the Rimrock Road corridor, providing an overall increase in the total number of buses going through the area, as shown on this graph.
Aquí solo pretendemos mostrar que habrá un aumento en el número de autobuses que pasará por su vecindario. El borrador inicial tendrá 36 autobuses de la ruta G, comparado con los 30 autobuses que pasan durante el día con la ruta 16 actual.
And that's just showing the total number of buses on weekends.
Y aquí está el gráfico comparando el servicio de la propuesta con lo actual sobre los weekends.
Okay, so moving towards the draft, moving from the draft plan to the final plan, we will use an amendment process. So we are investigating different amendments to the draft plan. We will lay out plausible amendments to the draft plan, and then City of Madison and City of Fitchburg policymakers will decide which ones to include.
Y hablaremos sobre algunos cambios al borrador, y últimamente los legisladores de la ciudad de Madison y de la ciudad de Fitchburg decidirán cuál será la ruta final.
Looking at the map in closer to the area, this is the draft plan map. Again, the colors are different, but the routes are the same. One change that we are investigating is providing better service closer to the neighborhood west of Rimrock Road, near Pheasant Ridge, closer to where Route 16 currently goes, while trying to also keep Route G as fast and direct as possible.
Ya les mostraremos algunos cambios de la ruta G, manteniendo que no sea muy indirecta la ruta.
So this is one option that we're considering. This would be a small loop on west of Rimrock. This street here is Latitude 43 Street, and then this street here is Novation Parkway. So buses in both directions would make a clockwise loop around there, and there would be a bus stop right there at Latitude 43 and Novation, which would then be a one block walk to the current bus stop at Pheasant Ridge in Deer Valley.
Y aquí les mostramos una propuesta para extender la ruta G a Novation y Latitude 43. Pondremos una parada ahí, un bloque de Pheasant Ridge y Deer Valley.
Another option that we are considering is doing this larger loop around Badger, Pheasant Ridge, and then coming back towards Novation Parkway. That route is not currently possible because the street connection is not there yet. But I think that's something that we would like to consider when that street connection is made.
Una propuesta alternativa pretende extender la ruta G para Pheasant Ridge y Deer Valley, pero actualmente no es posible porque las calles no se conectan, pero hay posibilidad que los legisladores de la ciudad de Fitchburg y Madison decidan conectar esas calles para completar la ruta G de esta manera.
Alternative 3 is another option we looked at. This is a larger loop with Route G that's similar to the loop that Route 16 currently does. This larger loop is problematic for us because it drastically increases costs because of the way the schedules work out for Route G. It also significantly makes Route G longer and more circuitous for people going through the area.
Otra propuesta que existe será extendiendo la ruta G de esta manera. Es más circuita e indirecta y sube el costo del proyecto sustancialmente. No la recomendamos, pero queremos mostrarles que sería una posibilidad.
And finally, this is another option that could work with or without whatever change we make to Route G. This would be a change of Route Z, which would use Badger Road, Pheasant Ridge, and Ski Lane west of Rimrock, which would provide service within the neighborhood. And it would go between Fitchburg and downtown, but it would only operate during rush hours.
Actualmente se considera posible que no se vaya a extender la ruta G para su vecindario y en vez se extendería la ruta Z para su vecindario de esta manera.
Okay, so some key takeaways with the transit network redesign and the draft plan. Bus routes will be longer, straighter, and more frequent. Transfer points will be eliminated, eliminating a lot of unnecessary delays in indirection, and the system overall will be far simpler, more logical, and easier to use.
Okay, y hacemos este rediseño porque queremos que las rutas serán más frecuentes y directas, sin puntos de transferencia. Queremos eliminar los puntos de transferencia para evitar retrasos y rutas indirectas. Y sobre todo se pretende diseñar un sistema más simple, lógico y más fácil de usar.
One other thing to mention is that no changes are planned to the supplemental school day service, but these routes may be adjusted based on the outcome of the redesign plan. And no changes to paratransit are planned, but some areas outside of this area, mainly in peripheral Madison, will be eligible for paratransit that are not currently.
No se pretende cambiar las rutas de escuelas suplementarias, pero tal vez se ajustarán con el último borrador del rediseño. No, tampoco se pretende cambiar o reducir las áreas de paratransit, pero algunas áreas ahora tendrán servicio.
So the next steps, we will have a plan with amendments adopted in summer of 2022. We're currently working on finalizing these amendments, and so that's why the input today will be very timely and useful for us. And then the new network will be implemented in the summer of 2023.
Ya en este mes se consideran los comentarios sobre las enmiendas a los borradores actuales y se piensa adoptar el plan final para este verano y ya la nueva red se instalará para el próximo verano de 2023.
And so that is the end of my presentation. We'll take questions and comments in just a moment, but just to recap here, we have the website, mymetrobus.com/redesign. We also have an email address where you can reach us with questions or comments. We read all of those and try to get back within a day or two. metroredesign@cityofmadison.com. And then Metro's general phone number is listed there, 608-266-4466. You can call us that way as well.
We're available to take feedback at the Customer Service Center at that number at 266-4466. I can also take questions in Spanish. Puedo tomar sus preguntas en español en el número 266-4466.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Daniel. So just to review kind of for questions in the audience here, we do have a microphone over here just for folks online. That would be the ideal. We also have a walking microphone. If you want to just raise your hand, we can get over to you. From folks online, and the best way to do this would be to just raise your hand via the Zoom functionality. And then for all of these, I'll either repeat the question, or Daniel will also repeat the question in Spanish just to make sure everybody can hear it and the answer. So with that, Daniel, do you want to review that?
Ahora estamos dispuestos a tomar preguntas en inglés o español. And if you don't have any feedback right now for me, I highly recommend calling the customer service number at 266-4466. We have many friendly customer service reps who are eager to talk to you about your opinions on the redesign.
Thanks, Daniel. I think we have a question here in the audience.
I'm Mick Malee. I'm the owner of Maple Glen Apartments in Southdale. We have a 130-unit project. Since the last meeting, first of all, I want to thank you for coming and explaining this to us. It's been very helpful. I've learned even more than I knew before, which is a wonderful thing, and I'm glad for the conversation. Between the last meeting that we had and this one, we polled our residents. Again, we have 130 units. And we ask our residents, you know, would this impact them? How strongly do they feel about it, and so on and so forth. And we ended up, and I'm just going to hand this out, I guess, and give it to you all. But we ended up with 43 signatures here on this. And these were folks that just pretty much came into the office while they were paying rent, and they're all impacted. And so it is an important issue to the neighborhood. I think we have to do all that we can to improve the current design of the plan to somehow get a bus route into that neighborhood and away from really busy streets. We've got a lot of kids in that neighborhood, many, many kids. So the other large concern is the to and from school. And I think I want to make sure I heard this right, but that's not going to be impacted. But then there was a caveat that said, depending upon the rerouting, the final design. So I'm not sure what that means. The question I will face, and our management will face, is will my kids be able to pick up the bus in front of Deer Valley Road or Pheasant Ridge Trail like they have forever? And will that likely change? So that's question number one. If you can clarify that tonight for us and give us a definitive answer, I would be grateful, and I think a lot of folks in the neighborhood would be grateful.
El señor pretende abrir una discusión sobre el servicio dentro del vecindario. Expresa que sus residentes están concerned con la propuesta actual, y Metro debe asegurar que considera que hay muchos niños que usan los autobuses dentro del vecindario.
Okay, thank you for that question. So the question about the school service is no, we do not see any changes to the school service. We do review the school routes regularly with the school district. So those do change from time to time based on the loads of the buses, where the students are living, and that kind of thing. They're largely designed about where the regular routes don't work for school transportation. So there could be some changes based on the transit network redesign, but I don't envision any changes to that. Now there is an extra trip of Route 16 that's funded and considered part of the school service. It's a special trip that's designed to coincide with the bell times of the school. And so I could see that potentially being converted into a separate L route rather than just being an extra trip on the G that might go into the neighborhood deeper than Route G goes. And so, it's hard to say that there won't be any changes to the school district service. Again, because we regularly review those routes to try to make them better. But the service that's within the neighborhood going to the schools, we anticipate that staying the same, if not being increased to account for the service on Route G being farther from the neighborhood.
Thank you.
El señor Chekvala quiere aclarecer.
I'm sorry, I think we lost Daniel again. We'll probably move on to another question, and then we might have that repeated. I do, just 1 second, I think there was a hand up online. Naribet Hirst, do you require any translation?
No, but I can do the translating when Daniel's out, if you like.
That's great. If you want to translate your own question, thank you. I would appreciate it.
Okay, so I know last time we had this meeting with, Fitchburg a couple of weeks ago, we were told that essentially the plan is for there only to be essentially one main bus stop, and it's out on the outskirts towards like Moreland. And similar to the question regarding, the kids that do, sometimes do wake up late and end up missing the school bus and things like that, they can take the transfer point along with. There was a gentleman at the previous meeting who, explained that he's disabled. He could barely make it to the meeting, which is right down the road. Is that still essentially the plan of having only one stop kind of in this area, not actually in the Southdale neighborhood? Mi pregunta es que la última vez que tuvimos la cita con el alcalde de Fitchburg, mencionó que esencialmente solo iba a haber una parada y iba a estar más cerca de la calle Moreland. Si eso todavía es el plan, basado que mencionaron que un señor la última vez que estuvo ahí en la cita mencionó que él tenía discapacidad y que se le hizo muy difícil poder caminar hasta allá, que si todavía ese es el plan de solo tener una parada por Moreland o hay plan de meter otra parada aquí por el barrio de Southdale.
Okay, thanks for that question. It looks like Daniel's back, so might come back. But anyway, to answer your question, with the draft plan, the only bus stop in the neighborhood would really be at Moreland and Rimrock. And the idea there was to keep Route G being as fast and direct as possible, continuing from the south side towards the east side. So we do see a lack of service closer to the apartments and neighborhoods west of Rimrock. So that's why we've looked at these other alternatives, particularly the smaller loop, which would provide a second bus stop at latitude 43 and Novation, which would be 2 blocks closer to the neighborhood and only 1 block away from the existing stop at Pheasant Ridge and Deer Valley. Apologize for the lack of street names on the map, but so as you can see, that gets you quite a bit closer to the neighborhood while still trying to maintain the directness that we're trying to achieve with Route G. I think there's also a set of stops around Rimrock and Badger, so that's there as well, but that's a little bit farther from the neighborhood.
Metro está considerando añadir esta extensión para la ruta G para adicionar otra parada en el barrio de Southdale. Actualmente la propuesta solo incluye una parada en Rimrock y Moreland. Por eso queremos extender la ruta G con esta extensión.
And if we could, just to close the loop on the previous question, I'm sorry we lost Daniel again, but the question was about school service and going into a little bit more detail there. And the answer was that the school service is not planned to change at all with the redesign, but we do regularly review the school routes with the school district, looking at things like how the buses are used, if some routes are overcrowded, depending on where the students happen to live and the travel demands at the time. One route, one of the school district routes is an extra trip on Route 16. It's just an extra trip on Route 16 that's intended to address overloading on Route 16 and coincide with bell times at La Follette High School. And so one change we could envision is that extra trip may be converted into a separate L route trip that would go farther into the neighborhood rather than just being an extra trip on Route G. So Daniel, if you're able to quickly summarize that.
Para aclarecer, no se pretende alterar los servicios suplementarios para las escuelas. También revisaremos las rutas ya más después, cuando podemos tener discusiones con administradores de las escuelas para estudiar de cuál manera se están usando los autobuses y en cuáles vecindarios se requiere más servicio.
Thank you. I think we had a question here in the audience.
Hi.
Can you hear it?
Good?
No, you're good?
Okay. Hi, my name's Gloria Reyes. I'm the CEO of Briar Patch Youth Services. We're at 2720 Rimrock Road, so farther down of where the bus will stop. We currently have a bus stop right across the street. Briar Patch Youth Services serves our most vulnerable youth in the city, homeless. We have our justice-involved youth under the ages of 18 years old. Just wondering if you've done an equity analysis on this redesign and really examined the unintended consequences that this has on our most vulnerable population. That's one question. And then the other question is, who is this redesigned for? And it seems to me that we're trying to go fast, but there are significant gaps in service to our most vulnerable population amongst this area, not only this area, but across the city. And wondering if you've done an equity analysis and if that has been shared, what you came up with as far as your response to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
La señora quiere preguntar sobre si se ha hecho un análisis de equidad de nuestros servicios y en cuáles maneras Metro pretende atender a las necesidades de nuestras poblaciones más marginalizadas.
Thank you for that question. So the answer is we are considering equity as we design the draft plan and as we craft amendments to make it the final plan. We will be doing a full service equity analysis once we have the final plan ready to go. And if that shows some changes that need to be made, we will address those. So just one thing to consider is that a lot of the complaints and shortcomings of the current system have to do not so much with coverage, but with people saying it takes too long to get anywhere. And I'm not talking about commuters from out of town. I'm talking about people who live on the south side, the east side, and they're traveling to the north side or the west side. And they have a bus stop in front of their house, but they look at the schedules and it takes an hour and a half to get to their job. And so it just doesn't work for them. So that's one of the things that we're trying to address with this plan, while also, as we talked about earlier, providing the coverage that's necessary to provide service for the people who need it. And that's why we're here today. And that's why we're looking at these changes and these amendments.
Sí se ha hecho un análisis preliminaria de equidad. Siempre Metro quiere considerar las necesidades de nuestras poblaciones marginalizadas. Luego que se finalice nuestro rediseño, se completará otro análisis de equidad y si se encuentra que hay brechas significativas, se asistirán ya que se complete el análisis.
Thanks, and Daniel, I apologize. This is complex. If you need me to repeat anything, just let me know.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that question. Josh Jenkins online. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks for holding this meeting. I appreciate the effort being in the community itself too, even though it looks like from the camera there isn't a lot of in-person turnout. But I did want to kind of clarify, this redesign is being presented as like making the whole system, more efficient and sort of addressing, length of ride and all that. But, we are also being annexed from town of Madison to city of Fitchburg. I may have missed this, but what part of the redesign of the lines that are going to service our neighborhood is due to Metro redesign, and what part is due to Fitchburg and its willingness to fund Metro service? And I'll pause for translation, but I did have a follow-up.
Sure.
El señor pretende preguntar sobre cómo se está financiando y el rediseño y si el financiamiento afecta cómo se está realizando el proyecto.
And let me answer that, then we'll go back to you, Josh. So I didn't really talk about budget. So the way that this works is that we're assuming that we will have roughly the same budget and ability to provide service as we did before the pandemic. So our service levels have dropped before the pandemic or after the pandemic. And as we recover from the pandemic in the next year or so, we're assuming that will rise up basically to that same level. We've also looked at the service hours within our partnering communities, such as Fitchburg and others like Middleton. And as we have it estimated now, we're roughly cost neutral, both in terms of the entire system and within those communities like Fitchburg. So the Fitchburgs, they will assume a small amount of service hours that were previously in the town of Madison. And so we're kind of taking that into account, saying that their service hours would increase slightly anyway. We have, reserved a small contingency just to be on the safe side. But that's kind of currently where we are, is we're relatively cost neutral compared to 2019, and also within Madison and within Fitchburg.
Mike está aclareciendo que el presupuesto se espera que será casi equivalente al presupuesto actual y no habrá cambios significativos.
And go ahead with your second question, Josh.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess I need to follow up on that first question, and apologies if I didn't make myself clear, but, you know, the bottom line here is that this design is not going to be acceptable to the neighborhood. I can guarantee you it's going to be a disability rights issue, a race issue, an age issue. I agree with every comment so far. So my question is, do we need to, engage you as Metro to retain our service, or do we need to lobby Fitchburg to guarantee funding? Because there is, some reporting that's shown this as a lapse, that Fitchburg is not going to be assuming the same arrangement that the town of Madison currently has. But it sounds like you just said that's not true. I don't really need the budget details right now, but I just want to know who's going to be making a decision, because we have to convince you to keep our service the way it is. Neither of the other two options are acceptable. And I want to know, is that Fitchburg's responsibility or Metro's?
Okay, go ahead, Daniel.
Está preguntando si la responsabilidad de pues los efectos de los cambios si cae mayormente con los legisladores de Fitchburg o con los legisladores de Madison Metro, y para quién se debe dirigir preguntas sobre la equidad o la inequidad percibida del rediseño.
And so the answer is both. Metro Transit and the city of Fitchburg work closely with each other. The transit plans will be, transit changes are approved by both the city of Fitchburg and Metro Transit's oversight committee. And so we are both here today, myself and others representing Metro Transit, and Andrew and others representing the city of Fitchburg.
Y la respuesta es que ambos asumen responsabilidad por los cambios y todos los efectos de los cambios. Por eso estamos aquí, para hablar con ustedes hoy y tomar todos los comentarios sobre esta propuesta.
And just to
Okay.
follow. Oh, sorry, Josh. Do you have a follow-up on that?
Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, so I guess the follow-up is, I really agree with Ms. Rey's comment that an equity analysis needs to be done. I wasn't really satisfied to hear that that's going to happen after the draft is completed. I think that should be starting, from square one, because when I look, it's a little hard to interpret this plan. I'll be honest, there's a lot of information. And to connect the dots and understand how ridership's going to be affected all over the city it's a challenge. But from what I see, a lot of working class neighborhoods are going to be affected in very similar ways by this plan. And I think if you let it get to the final proposal before you engage an equity process, you're going to leave a lot of people out, including this neighborhood. I don't want to just complain about here. I look at the north side, it looks unacceptable as well. We can't get into the specifics, but I'll call your office and tell you why it's unacceptable here. And I really agree with all the comments so far, and I'll finish there.
Josh quiere expresar que hay problemas serios con la propuesta actual en términos de servicio a minorías y a gente trabajadora que necesita más de nuestros servicios, y deberíamos poner atención en los comentarios que recibimos hoy.
And thank you. I think we'll take those comments. I would also encourage you to email us at metroredesign@cityofmadison.com. That is the easiest way for us to kind of collect these comments and organize them for policymakers, both at the City of Madison and at the City of Fitchburg, to review.
Por favor, escríbenos o llámenos para someter sus comentarios. Esa es la mejor manera de organizar todos los comentarios para los legisladores que decidirán la propuesta final.
And just a quick thing to add from Fitchburg's perspective. So prior to the network redesign and kind of going into 2023 estimation, Metro assumed that we would be taking on a portion of Route 16 based upon the new boundaries. So just to kind of reiterate, the previous assumption was the city would just take on the town of Madison's portion of the Route 16. Dan, you want to hit that and I'll hit another point?
Sorry, could you clarify that again?
Yeah, so basically, during the annexation talks and kind of the future forecasting of City of Fitchburg annual service hours, the estimation was that we would take on basically half of the town of Madison's portion of Route 16. So prior to the network redesign, the assumption was Route 16 would stay, City of Fitchburg would take on their new portion of it.
Antes de la propuesta, se esperaba que la ciudad de Fitchburg tomara 50% del presupuesto para la Ruta 16, pero ya que habrá el rediseño, los legisladores tendrán que discutir más.
But then, just as Mike mentioned, the network redesign really offers an opportunity to streamline service. Both irrespective of kind of Fitchburg or Madison. And what the point is, not just that we're getting more frequent routes in a lot of places, but also that we're getting more direct service, that, you can get from point A to point B more directly without kind of doing deviation. So generally speaking, we're talking about trying to improve the service for folks who are on the bus. But of course, that comes at the expense of longer walks. And so that's why we're trying to come here tonight to talk about what are the possible alternatives that might not replace the existing service, but might come close. And if that's a small deviation into the neighborhood and a commuter service or some other variation, that's really what we want to talk about. What potentially other than the existing service would be a good alternative for folks living here based upon where you need to go using transit.
Sí, Fitchburg y la ciudad de Madison, que ya es la ciudad de Madison, tienen el 50 y el 50. El metro está rediseñando el metro, ¿verdad? La pandemia a todos nos dejó en ceros. Ellos quieren recuperarse. ¿Y nosotros en dónde quedamos? ¿Nuestros vecindarios en dónde vamos a estar? ¿No piensan en nosotros? ¿En nuestros hijos? Nosotros estamos luchando para irnos a trabajar, ir por la comida. ¿Nuestros hijos, cuando caiga la nieve, vamos a venir caminando hasta la gasolinería? ¿Tengo que jalar a mis hijos para para llevarlos a la escuela? Es algo injusto que sepa la ciudad de Madison y Fitchburg, que se hagan responsables por lo que está sucediendo con nosotros. Somos un vecindario que estamos tratando de sobresalir también de la pandemia. Todos estamos saliendo, no nada más la ciudad de Madison y Fitchburg. También nosotros, nuestro pequeño vecindario. Y lo único que estamos pidiendo es las paradas de bus que están ahorita, que lo quieran diseñar otra vez, háganlo. Nosotros estamos pagando taxas también, estamos trabajando para eso.
Sure. Gracias. Daniel, can you please interpret that?
So she's saying that as a concerned taxpayer, she's worried about the effects of the redesign. She's concerned about how her children will be able to use the bus, and not only her children, but other children in the neighborhood. She says that the pandemic has affected all of us in many different ways. and she sees that Metro and the cities of Madison and Fitchburg are trying to build up again, but she wants to emphasize that in this building up, that neighborhoods like Southdale are being included in these plans to build up again. And she wants Metro to be accountable, to be held accountable for the effects of these changes, and to seriously take into consideration working class people in the neighborhood.
Thank you for those comments. Yeah, I think that's why we're here today, to try to listen and refine some of these possible amendments and changes. One of the considerations was with the proposed loop of the G on Novation Parkway is that people, including children, would not have to cross the busy street that is Rimrock Road. And so what we're trying to do is as Daniel and others, as Andrew and others have mentioned, try to achieve the overarching goals of the transit network redesign while also incorporating the needs of the communities. And so again, that's why we're here, and that's why we're listening, and we will continue to look at different ways that we can do that.
Muchas gracias por su comentario. Sí, estamos preocupados también con los efectos del rediseño, y por eso estamos aquí para tomar todos sus comentarios. Le aseguramos que Metro sí está considerando la gente de este vecindario, y pretendemos proveer el mejor servicio posible.
I think we had a question up here. If you can, there's a mic pretty close to you. Otherwise, we got. Oh, sorry, we got a question back. Oh, sorry, we had a question back there first. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Llevo 23 años viviendo en esta área y estoy aquí por el bus para mis hijos, que pasa cerca de mi casa, que cuando cambia el horario, eso está oscuro para que mi hija vaya a caminar hasta por allá. Es un riesgo para la inseguridad que vivimos. Entonces, creo que es injusto, y también decirles que su nuevo diseño que hicieron, eso nada más le da vuelta a la gasolinería, y es lo mismo. A mí me gustaría que quedara ahí donde está, porque hay muchos niños que toman el bus, muchos adultos que van a trabajar, que tienen doble trabajo. Hay personas adultas con discapacidad. Yo lo digo porque llevo tantos años viviendo aquí, y eso está bien como está. Ya somos parte de Fitchburg, ok, pero no nos cambien la parada de bus. Solo pedimos eso. Gracias. Y mi hija está estresada y está aquí cuando dice ella que ella no tiene por qué estresarse. Ya está pensando en el cambio de horario, imagínense. Creo que es injusto. Eso es todo. Gracias.
Gracias.
Gracias por su comentario. She's concerned about the current design of the bus stop. The bus stop is currently near a gasoline station, not very helpful to the residents of the neighborhood. She's concerned about all of the kids in the neighborhood that take the bus, and the people who work 1-2 jobs who rely on the current system. And she thinks that the current system works pretty well.
Okay, thanks for those comments. So I'll talk a little bit specifically about the actual bus stop itself, because I think this is important. So looking at the map here, I'm sharing my screens if you can't see it, but so this is Rimrock Road, north-south, Moreland. As we have it in the draft plan, Route G would come south on Rimrock and turn right on Moreland, and so there would be a set of stops at this signalized intersection at Moreland and Rimrock. And so what we would like to do is do this deviation of the G, which would come across on latitude 43 and Novation Parkway. That would put a set of bus stops at this corner of latitude 43 and Novation Parkway. It would be farther away from the gas station, and you would not have to cross the busy street of Rimrock Road, and it would be 2 blocks closer from Rimrock and Moreland. Just to address the second part of, Daniel, why don't you go ahead and then I'll address the second part.
Mike quiere mostrarles dónde se ubicarán paradas de autobús. Could you point to the spots where there will be bus stops again? Estarán aquí. Is there anywhere else?
So here at Moreland, and then this is the one where we would add. This
Okay.
is the one that we would add from the draft plan.
Okay, y pretendemos añadir otra parada ahí en la Novation Parkway y Latitude 43.
Yeah, and then just to address the second part of the question, one of the things that we're trying to do with this project is to improve service levels during evenings and weekends as people are trying to make second jobs work, make jobs work that don't have regular commute schedules where you're often traveling at nights and on weekends. And so that's a fairly significant part of this plan. Where that service would improve from every 30 minutes to, it would improve from every 60 minutes to every 30 minutes so that you're not waiting as long for the bus on evenings and weekends.
Una de las maneras que Metro pretende mejorar el servicio para la gente del barrio es por añadir otro autobús cada hora, entonces serían autobuses cada 30 minutos dentro del vecindario para ayudar a la gente a llegar a sus empleos y para extender servicio en los fines de semana.
Sorry, and then if I could add one other thing, I just want to mention this as well, that there's this gap here, as we all know, where there's a sidewalk connection, but there's no street connection. When that street connection is made, then we would like to do this slightly larger loop around Badger, Pheasant Ridge, and latitude 43 towards Novation. That would get the stop even closer towards Pheasant Ridge and Deer Valley, but that will not be available until that street connection is made. So I just wanted to make sure that, I touched on that briefly. I just want to make sure that you know about that.
Y otra vez, Mike quiere mostrar una alternativa. Aquí puede rastrear su flecha sobre la ruta posible. Actualmente no es posible porque hay un sendero y se tendría que quitar para conectar las calles y dejar pasar a los autobuses en ese rastreo.
Thank you. I think we have a question here in the audience.
I get back and forth my work. I work in the morning, nighttime, and then keep the bus going. Sometimes I go to the store. I can't afford to take a cab all the time. And as a part-time worker, all day keep the trams are going.
Could you clarify? Are you talking about with the new?
City bus is transport to get back and forth.
Yep.
I work down to campus.
Do you currently use the Route 16?
Pardon?
Do you currently use the Route 16?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll have Daniel repeat that, and then Mike can talk to that a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of at the
El
wider
señor
scale.
quiere saber un poco más sobre los cambios de la Ruta 16.
Okay, I'll just clarify. I think I heard the question correctly. It was that you travel to campus on Route
Yes.
16, and you're wondering how you do that in the new system.
Oh, I take a bus in the morning or nighttime, get back and forth my work. Then I got to take a bus back home.
And can I ask where you work?
I work at UW Kitchen, Camp Randall's. And
Okay,
closer.
on campus.
Yes.
Okay, so it would be similar. You would catch the bus likely here at latitude 43 and Novation Parkway.
Sorry. Could you share your screen, Mike? Sorry, I started. Go for
I
it.
used to catch on ski lane, the bus stop right there.
Yep. I think you typically take Route 16 over to the south transfer point and then go.
Yes.
Okay.
The transport and take a other bus, get out to a campus.
Yeah, so Mike can help you kind of with the new service, what that would look like potentially.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so with the new service, assuming if we did this smaller loop on latitude 43 in Novation, you would then catch the bus there, which would be similar to Route 16. You would catch it going westbound, which would essentially go to where the south transfer point currently is. And then you would transfer to Route B, which is equivalent to Route 5 today, except Route 5 does not go to campus. Route B will.
Yeah.
And so that would go up Park Street and towards campus, and you would get off at Park and Johnson probably.
Yeah, use it. 13.
Some other option is if you were traveling at rush hour, you would be able to take Route Z.
Yeah.
That would go up towards John Nolan. And then we're trying to figure out now one option, and I didn't go into this, but we're trying to figure out if Route Z should go to the Capitol Square or towards campus. So you can kind of do one or both or either.
Okay.
Daniel, could you just quickly run through that?
Sí, si tiene preguntas acerca cuáles rutas tomará en el futuro con el rediseño, podría contactarnos al número 266-4466 y allí podríamos ayudarles a encontrar una ruta que funciona para usted.
Was there a follow-up question? Yeah, you have a question?
I was wondering when this is going to be into effect, because my daughter's going to UW Law for next year, and she'll have to take the bus. So I was wondering, so we can plan
Sure.
on the buses, when will we know when everything changes?
Yeah, I can take that. And Daniel, you want to repeat that?
Pardon?
La señora quiere saber cuándo se implementarán los nuevos cambios.
So I believe Metro, sorry, Mike, this is really a Metro question, but it's simple enough, that the planned service start date would be June 2023. So we have roughly a year for Metro to implement these changes, kind of plan it, and then it would go into effect in summer 2023.
So right now, when the school starts back in September, everything is what they are now. All the bus stops are the same?
I don't know if Metro has other plan changes for August. I'll let Mike talk to that, but these network redesign changes won't take effect until next summer.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Correct. Yeah, we don't have any service changes identified for August. Sometimes we just adjust the schedules or, make some adjustments if there's overloading downtown or things like that. But no, we do not have any changes planned for August of 22. As Andrew mentioned, this will go into effect in summer of 23. Daniel, if you just want to summarize anything new there.
Los cambios que discutimos hoy se implementarán para el verano de 2023 en junio.
Josh, I think you had your hand up for a little while. I just want to double check. Do you have an additional question, or is that just from earlier?
Oh, no, that's right now. Yeah, if
Okay,
I could go again, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
I don't know if can you bring up that map again of the aerial photo, the neighborhood? Just a comment about the possible alternative that you've been talking about with the intersection kind of in the middle of the Novation campus. Those street names, by the way, are not commonly known to people around here. So so you were proposing a stop on a loop through what is all vacant land in the Novation development. And I just really want to, strongly encourage you to avoid that spot as some sort of bridge solution here. There's no homes anywhere nearby, no businesses anywhere nearby. It's just not a safe spot for kids or elderly or people to wait alone at a bus stop. It's a complete desert out there. So really, that's not going to work for the neighborhood either. I think, like people have said tonight, my neighbors are here, I think you need to plan on a draft that, potentially when that new connection goes in, maybe you can alter service at that time. But right now you're talking about, I think if I count right, 8 stops that the 16 currently makes in the neighborhood being reduced to 1 or maybe 2. It's way too far for people to walk, and that alternate location in the middle of the field is not safe.
Josh quiere expresar que actualmente hay más o menos 8 paradas dentro del barrio, que se reducirá a solamente una parada con este borrador actual. Y quiere enfatizar que en esta área es muy desolada y no muy confortable para estar esperando.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I think that's helpful. So I don't really have a response, but I do think that those are helpful comments. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
I actually was just going to say the same thing that Josh said, that
great.
While that little loop is real convenient and probably fits the price point, fits the timing, can mesh in nicely with everything else, it really doesn't work. It's not safe. I would like you, if you're thinking of using the stop, go sit there yourself and just hang out for a minute and see what it feels like to sit there. If you think about kids going there by themselves, think about winter time. Like I said, it sure fits nicely on paper, but reality is really different. And I second what Josh said. And the ideal really is that 150 feet of road getting finished to get the loop through. And instead of one stop in the transition period, trying to figure out a way to get more stops to happen instead of a very poorly placed one.
Thank you.
La señora quiere enfatizar que esa parada no está en un lugar muy seguro, y si pensamos en el invierno, cuando hay nieve y niños que tienen que esperar allá solos, también gente con discapacidades o gente ya de tercera edad, no es muy seguro para que ellos esperen ahí.
So similar response here, just thank you for those comments. I do think that's helpful. I will say that I do like to do those kinds of things. So I probably will head out there and just kind of sit there for a bit and have a coffee and kind of see what the area looks like. I do like to do that kind of field research. So I appreciate the suggestion, and I probably will do that.
Si tomamos en cuenta ese tipo de comentarios, nuestros planificadores regularmente visitan a los lugares en los cuales pensamos poner paradas para sentir más o menos como pasajeros se sentirían en esas situaciones.
Thank you. I think Jay Allen has a question at home, and then I think we had a question in the audience here.
Hi, yes, this is Jay Allen from the Fitchburg City Council. I had intended on being there tonight, and I'm sorry I wasn't. My job kind of got in the way of reality. So, but Andrew, I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you. Is the right-of-way already dedicated for that road to be built?
Okay, el señor pregunta si ya ha obtenido la ciudad el derecho de paso para conectar a las dos calles para la alternativa actualmente no posible.
Yes, from my understanding it is. We started doing some initial analysis of what that would look like, but we haven't done a full engineering study. And the concern is there's some really closely spaced apartments, so there just could be more right-of-way and additional kind of complexities to a street. The length really isn't a problem, but some of the kind of existing land uses and just making sure it meshes well with those could be complicated.
Well, that you kind of stumbled into my next question, which was I drove through there the other day looking at that, and it appeared to me that there's currently an apartment building or possibly two that are in the way of where that road would have to go in order to connect. Does that mesh with what you have observed?
Daniel, do you want to just repeat what I said and what Jay responded with?
Actualmente la ciudad sí tiene el derecho de paso, solo que también existen dos edificios de apartamentos que posiblemente se verían afectados por una calle conectando en ese lugar.
Yes, Jay, to answer your question, it is definitely very tight, definitely tricky. This would be the preferred route, I believe. If this was a simpler fix, we would be able to accomplish this potentially by putting it in the CIP, getting it done next year or the year following. But just with some of the complexities, that's why we're not committing to this now. But this is the ideal transit route, I would think.
Y vemos el pedazo de tierra que se podría usar para conectar la ruta G para completar la extensión más grande ya más en el futuro.
Well, after looking at that some more, I gotta agree with the residents there. I mean, first of all, I think you've got a major problem with having a bus stop that's essentially in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I know there's stuff around there, but it's in an isolated area. And if that road is not built before the winter time, you know, obviously that grass isn't being plowed, so people are going to have a long friggin' way to walk to get to that one bus stop. I think the long-term solution is going to be to figure out a way to get the bus into the neighborhood. Now, I know there may be timing and connection issues with that, and there'll probably be some additional cost, but in my view, as an elected official in Fitchburg, I don't think the proposed alteration is anywhere even close to adequate for what these residents need.
El consejero Allen quiere expresar que es inadecuado el actual plan para proveer servicio al barrio de Southdale. Quiere enfatizar que la parada actual no está segura y en el invierno será muy difícil para muchos tipos de gente usar esa parada.
Yep, I totally understand where you come from, Jay, and from the residents who spoke tonight. I mean, this is kind of a tricky spot that we don't have a great solution with the current grid network, and that's why we're trying to kind of compromise of what's a reasonable in between before we can try to take on additional road construction and that assessment. So that's why we propose these amendments, specifically the one that we've been talking about mainly, but also potentially one that could help other folks, the Z alternative that would give folks a direct commuter access to downtown and potentially the UW campus. So those two potential kind of short-term amendments until a more long-term promising one with that road connection could be established.
Con la tierra disponible ahora, el círculo no es posible de completar. Entonces, así hemos decidido en la primera propuesta de la ruta G.
I think we have a question in the audience.
Hola, mi nombre es Claudia y vivo aquí hace más de 20 años y trabajo en el St. Mary's Hospital. Agarro el autobús, entro a las 6 de la mañana y lo único que me gustaría saber, si ustedes tomaron la decisión para cambiarnos de un condado a otro condado, ¿por qué no pensaron en las consecuencias que eso traía? Ustedes dicen que quieren recuperarse de la pandemia. Nosotros también, nosotros tenemos biles que pagar. Nosotros no tenemos carro como ustedes. ¿Ustedes manejan o agarran el autobús? Simplemente este señor que está al lado de mí, él no agarra el autobús y me imagino que nunca lo ha agarrado. Estamos pagando muchos taxes. Dicen ustedes que ir para allá, sí, cerquita, no va a estar tan lejos. No va a estar tan lejos para ustedes, pero para los niños, sí. Aún para mí, aunque ya esté grande, tengo asma. Empiezo a trabajar a las 6:30 de la mañana. Eso no sea justo que salimos de Guatemala para entrar a Guatepeor. Pagamos taxes y demasiados. Y la renta nomás sube y sube y sube, la comida sube, todo sube. Y nosotros nos preocupamos y ustedes están aquí como sin nada, no arreglan el problema. No hay ninguna solución, nomás hablan y hablan. Que van a hacer una carretera o algo así. ¿Cuándo? A nosotros no nos digan que la van a hacer, a nosotros díganos el día, hechos, queremos ver hechos, que a ustedes les importa, que ustedes nos cambiaron de un condado a otro. Si eso hubiera sido decisiones de nosotros, nadie se hubiese cambiado. Los únicos que van a perder son los dueños de los apartamentos. Ustedes no. Y lo que vamos a perder nosotros también, quizá nuestro trabajo, porque vamos a tener que llegar tarde todos los días, gracias a una decisión tan estúpida, y perdón la palabra, que se tomó. A nadie le importa eso. A nadie, absolutamente a nadie. Y otra vez, entramos de Guatemala para entrar a Guatepeor. Piensen en los niños. No piensen de que la pandemia nos arruinó mucho el negocio y todo eso. A todos, no nomás a ustedes. A todos. Pero a nadie le importa eso.
Gracias. Daniel, could you please interpret that?
Yes, she's expressing her deep frustration. She feels that as a taxpayer, she's paying way too much for the kind of service that we're planning to give the neighborhood residents. She's saying it's completely inadequate. As somebody who works really hard, wakes up at 6 a.m. To do her job, she's very concerned about how this is going to affect her, but not only her, as well as the working class residents of the neighborhood.
Okay, thanks for those comments. Again, I don't have much in response other than we're continuing to look at this and try to come up with something that accomplishes what we're trying to do, as well as works reasonably for the neighborhood and the people who use the system. So again, not much of a response, but just to let you know that we're listening, and that's why we're here, and we're trying to come up with different alternatives and solutions. So thank you.
Muchas gracias por su comentario. Sí, queremos expresar que sí estamos escuchando y apreciamos sus comentarios y sí los estamos tomando en cuenta. Metro trabaja muy duro para incluir a todas nuestras comunidades y les agradecemos por expresar sus comentarios en nuestra reunión.
Okay. We have another question here in the audience.
I guess just one final comment. The more I think about and reflect on this, it seems like the best alternative is to get that 150 feet of street. It works better for Metro. That's a doable route for Metro. It services our neighborhood. It would come into, to Deer Valley Road. It would be much safer. I think the concern, and it's been raised by several people is that it's where that proposed bus stop would be, it pretty much is in the middle of nowhere. And in the past, there have been some issues of taking the sidewalk from Deer Valley Road going toward the gas station. It's kind of a desolate area there. Really it's desolate pretty much between Pheasant Ridge in Deer Valley and the gas station. There's not much there. And Mike, if you go out there, would encourage you to go out in the evening, at night, because I think you would be quite surprised about the fact that there's just no one around. And I think Washid brought that up. It's kind of like a desert out there right now. I'm sorry? And it's a lighting issue too. I think I did come before I came here. There is a light at Latitude and Novation, but then when you go further toward Pheasant Ridge, there's a light post, but no light. So it's going to be a very dark sidewalk to go on. And then you have the issue too of in the morning, how do you get those shoveled out, the sidewalk cleaned out enough, and to have people feel safe in going to that area. I think that's an issue. And I think if you really hold a lot of people, that's a significant issue, leaving the neighborhood and the protection of at least some eyes around you, seeing that you're waiting for a bus. So I guess my question to you, it's more of an Andrew City question, and that is, how quickly could you get a street in? Does it make sense? If it's dedicated, is it wide enough? It should be wide enough if it was dedicated properly. Why couldn't we get that street in and then make the plan to do that loop that we talked about, which I think really is ultimately the best solution for everybody here. So, to me, that would be the one to drill down on. So that would be my question to you. Can we move that along? And can we move it along and really kind of piggyback it with this major change that is being proposed here?
Daniel, can you?
El señor está resumiendo las preocupaciones de todos los miembros del barrio hoy en la reunión, que la parada actual no está en un lugar seguro y está muy desolado. Quiere saber más sobre cómo se puede completar el círculo que ha propuesto Metro, pero que actualmente no es posible, y qué tomará para completar ese proyecto.
So I can cover the engineering, but as far as the city process and timeline, I'll let Chad take that one.
So I think it's clear to me that, while the city was evaluating option, I think it was 1 that had the loop onto Latitude 43 and Novation, that was identified as potentially a short-term fix, that clearly the long-term solution that may be best serving the neighborhood clearly is to connect Latitude 43 from Novation into Pheasant Ridge or Deer Valley, whichever it ultimately connects to. So the city is currently working on its capital improvement plan for 2023. Capital improvement plan is our budget for large projects in which we would typically borrow money for roadways, facilities, park improvements, those sorts of things, vehicles and equipment. So what we'll look to do is I'll have conversations tomorrow with Andrew and Bill Balke, our Director of Public Works, and see if we can accelerate the process of putting together some cost estimates on what it would take to connect Latitude 43, and possibly see if we can get that into the council for consideration for a 2023 project. Obviously, there are a variety of factors that will play into a decision to connect that. One, as Andrew has mentioned, is the right-of-way situation and how clean that is, so to speak, and if it's a straightforward process, it could make the project a lot more, to be completed a lot more quickly. If there's complications with that right-of-way, that obviously could present some challenges and delay the project. Ultimately, this would be This is a funding decision by the City Council and a priority that they will need to consider and identify amongst all of the other requests, not only for Fitchburg as it exists today, but also other areas within the town of Madison that's attaching to the city of Fitchburg that may also need infrastructure improvements, be it other roadways within the Southdale neighborhood that may need repair, maintenance, or resurfacing, or park facilities that may need improvements and refurbishment and those sorts of things. So we'll be looking at all of that. I'm sorry, Daniel, that I am speaking a long time here. We will be looking at all of that and doing an assessment. And we had originally planned to assess Latitude 43 connection as part of an assessment once we got in there. But it's clear to me from this meeting that we're going to need to accelerate that evaluation on Latitude 43.
Ok, para resumir, quiere expresar que ya después de esta reunión es evidente que se tiene que acelerar un estudio para conectar el círculo de la ruta G, porque se está mostrando que hay mayor necesidad dentro del barrio.
So one question that I have for all of you in attendance is, I fully recognize the reaction to the proposed loop on Latitude 43 and Novation as a potential short-term option, but our council is going to be considering these amendments in 2 weeks on May 24th. And one of the other options that's been presented, and I'll set aside the connection of Latitude 43 for a minute just because that's potentially the more long-term solution here. But we talked about a potential amendment to the Route Z, which is the commuter route that would run during rush hour in the morning and the evening, with the potential to come through the neighborhood and then connect to downtown and/or campus. I'm curious what level of interest the group has in that particular route amendment, or if you don't feel that because that's a morning rush hour and an evening rush hour route, that would have much beneficial impact to the city. That will be important information for us to take back to our elected officials as they consider the amendments. Yes, Andrew will put it up. We had presented that earlier, but we'll bring it back up again. Yep, exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. That's too bad. I don't know where sorry for the miscommunication. Okay. Oh, sorry, yeah, we started at 6. Our apologies. Sorry about that. But Andrew will bring up that route.
Yeah, and Daniel, could you repeat that question, or kind of that question to the audience?
Oh, Route Z, I think.
Yeah.
Which route was he talking about? I'm sorry.
He was asking if the change to Route Z that would go through the neighborhood, if people felt that would be beneficial, or if they thought that it would not be beneficial because it only runs during morning and afternoon peak periods.
También queríamos hacer preguntas acerca de la ruta Z, la alternativa que tenemos aquí, mostrada en la alternativa 4, el desvío de la ruta Z. Queremos saber si hay interés en este cambio o si les interesa más cambios con la ruta G. La diferencia sería que la ruta Z solo daría más servicio durante las horas peak periods, en la mañana y en la tarde.
I'm not sure why it's not light. So it follows, sorry, it's quite light here. It follows this path, so it's the Route 16 path, so it deviates from Rimrock to this. And then I can show the, I just kind of pointed out on the screen where it follows in the neighborhood. I will show a larger view of this route, if I can. That's correct. So the 49 is a loop that kind of goes one way through that area, but this would be kind of out and back. So right now, the Z line, as proposed in the base network, goes from downtown down through this neighborhood via Rimrock, and then goes to the Civic Center campus in Fitchburg, and then loops back around. This is only in the peak periods, Monday through Friday, so in the AM and PM peak. There is a proposed amendment for this to also go to the UW campus. So as somebody who mentioned earlier, if you're going to the UW campus during peak hours, Monday through Friday, this would be another option that right now, as in the base network, goes on Rimrock, but could go into the neighborhood. Daniel, do you want to summarize that?
Está resumiendo que la ruta Z ayudaría a la gente a ir desde el sur de la ciudad hacia la Universidad de Wisconsin. Actualmente la ruta Z está yendo desde el sur para el Capitolio, pero se podría hacer un cambio para mudar la ruta hacia la universidad en vez del Capitolio. O también se podría hacer los dos. Queremos comentarios sobre el asunto.
Are there any other comments about the Z or any specific feedback about that? Does it work? Does it not work at all? There's a question about what time of day this peak hour service, the Z, would run. Daniel, could you repeat that?
¿Cuáles son las horas pico?
The service span for this type of service is typically from like 6 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and then from roughly 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. on weekdays only.
En general, las horas pico caen entre semana desde 6 a 8 y media y 4 a 6 de la tarde.
And there's a follow-up question of every half hour, Monday through Friday.
Every 30 minutes, yep.
Oh. Sorry.
Yeah, would you mind just mentioning it's adding every 30 minutes? Maybe you did already, I'm sorry.
The Z route?
The Z route would be every 30 minutes during those times.
Okay. Sí, y durante las horas pico, la ruta Z correría cada 30 minutos.
I believe I have a question or comment from Jay Allen.
Yeah, so again, since I wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting, I just want to see if I'm understanding something. If that latitude 43 street was connected through to into the neighborhood, would the plan have been to take the G route down Badger Road and then to Pheasant Ridge and then back out to Rimrock going down latitude 43 Street? Would that have been the plan?
Daniel, can you repeat that question?
I'm sorry, could you go ahead and repeat that, please?
Yeah, I think the question was, Jay was asking if the long-term plan shown an alternative 2 would be the ultimate kind of ideal route.
The long-term Z route?
He's asking, he asked if this route shown here, if that connection had existed, would that have been in the plan from the beginning?
Okay. Para resumir, si existiera esa conexión, está preguntando si esa sería la ruta ideal, si ya existiera la conexión.
And the answer is we don't. I don't know. It's possible that it could have been. I will say that we've been looking at Route 16 through that area to try to make it more direct as those streets through the Novation campus have started coming together and be completed. We've been throughout the years looking at ways to use some of those new streets. It's impossible to tell if it would have been in the original plan to begin with because we knew that it wasn't there. but I will agree with others who say that this feels like the correct solution whenever it's completed. I feel like it meets Metro's needs of making the service faster and more direct while serving the neighborhood much better than either doing the draft plan as it exists or the small loop. This clearly, I agree with it. This clearly feels like the correct solution.
No se puede decir que definitivamente sería la ruta si existiera esa conexión, pero ya después de muchas reuniones y evaluando las alternativas, sí se ve que esa sería la alternativa mejor que atinge nuestra meta de servir a la más gente posible y al mismo tiempo siendo un servicio directo.
Jay, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess first, in a different conversation, Andrew, I want to talk about renaming Latitude 43 Street to something that makes sense. But aside from that, I guess I'll try to set up a meeting with you and Chad sometime next week, because we need to figure out how to expedite this. This is creating a major hardship on people for no reason. And we need to be able to figure out how to make this work out so that when this change comes, they don't have to deal with walking across a big grassy field.
El consejero reconoce la importancia de conectar estas calles y de cambiar el nombre de las calles también para que sean más fácil de recordar. Se ve que esta sería la alternativa mejor para mucha gente del barrio.
Thank you. So just to clarify on the city of Fitchburg's timeline, so we've talked about a lot of great options tonight. On the long-term side, we've talked about looking at that connection of Latitude 49 and Deer Valley. We've also talked about some short-term options. As far as the city's process, we're going to take a lot of those ideas back, talk about their feasibility and the timeline, and obviously get back to you folks. But the currently proposed timeline is that tomorrow, actually, just from how the schedule's worked out, and this is why we had to hold the meeting with such short notice, we're holding a Transportation and Transit Commission meeting to specifically talk about a 2022 transit plan, including the network redesign and proposed amendments. I'll stop there to let Daniel say that.
La ciudad de Fitchburg está actualmente revisando sus planes para el rediseño y mañana la Comisión de Transportes se reunirá para discutir sobre este asunto.
The included amendments at this time is this alternative one, just knowing we had short notice, we want to make sure something got into the council packet. So that one is included in the council packet right now. A potential other option would be that Route Z that would offer commuter service into the neighborhood. And then we can certainly look at other options, but currently right now the full G route isn't currently on the table only because it doesn't work well with the overall service as Mike mentioned initially. So that isn't currently one of the ones we're looking at, but that could change through deliberations both at the Transportation and Transit Commission and the council meeting. Danny, you want to jump in?
Could you pull up the two alternatives that we're discussing?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Actualmente las propuestas que considerará la comisión sería la alternativa 1, que es esta que se está mostrando en la pantalla, y la alternativa de la ruta Z, aquí, la alternativa 4. Actualmente estas son las que irán a las oficinas de los legisladores mañana.
And so just to clarify that, so I mean, really, the intention is to get something back to Madison Metro before the end of the month so that they can have a public hearing and try to approve the whole region network redesign. And so we want to make sure any decisions, we try to give them something now so that those can be incorporated in the full transit network redesign process.
Todos los comentarios de hoy y de la comisión mañana se tomarán en cuenta cuando Metro hace su reunión regional para el sistema completo, ya para el fin del mes de mayo.
Are there any questions about that process or anything? Sure. I think we have a question here in the audience.
I guess some of the bus routes going to change. Just way keep the same way.
Could you repeat that? The bus stops?
Yeah.
Are you talking about a specific bus stop?
Yeah, there's like buses. They got quite a few. I count about 8 of them.
Mm-hmm.
8 or 9. I just wondered, ain't the bus going to change? The bus stop going to change so much?
Yeah, I think the question was, would these alternatives change the current bus stops? Could you repeat that, Daniel?
La pregunta es si la propuesta actual cambiará el número de paradas en el barrio.
Yeah, so generally speaking about the project, the bus routes will continue to just serve the stops that are out there. There are some exceptions to that, of course. Where routes would no longer be on the streets that serve those bus stops would be closed. And then when we put the routes onto streets that don't currently have bus service, we would open new bus stops to accommodate the service on those streets. But it's just kind of rearranging bus stops on an as needed basis. Where we can just serve those stops on the street, we will generally just serve those stops. One thing I will add is that we'll be looking to see how travel patterns change with the new system. And so some bus stops could get new shelters and benches and things like that if they're starting to see more use and more transfers between routes.
Oh, okay.
Daniel, could you?
Sí habrá cambios en el número de paradas, pero Metro sí tomará en cuenta que habrá diferencias en las maneras de que viajan la gente. Estudiaremos los impactos de los cambios en el sistema y ya después si hay necesidad de añadir o reducir el número de paradas, se podría estudiar ya.
So as far as next steps, if you'd like, there is a Notify Me page on the city's website that is specific to public transportation, City of Fitchburg's website. If you sign up for those, we will push out announcements of those interested about public transit changes. Daniel, do you want to say that?
Where is that information available?
Oh, sure. So that is on the City of Fitchburg's website. I will pull it up as you speak.
Okay, queremos mostrarles que en la página de la ciudad de Fitchburg hay una página para enviar sus solicitudes para recibir notificaciones sobre los cambios del sistema. Se puede encontrar ahí en la primera página en donde está escrito Notify Me, me notifica.
And then, as I mentioned, we're going to have the Transportation and Transit meeting tomorrow at 6:30, and we're going to be discussing Resolution R101-22, specifically talking about all this topic, not just in Southdale, but in Fitchburg generally, of all transit routes recommended and amendments from the network redesign process.
Y ya los legisladores de la Comisión de la ciudad de Fitchburg estudiarán las propuestas que ha puesto Metro y ya mañana decidirán cuáles alternativas para mandar para la ciudad de Madison Metro Transit.
And then ultimately, the decision will be to Fitchburg Council as far as Fitchburg routes are concerned. That will be on May 24th at 7 o'clock. 7:30. And that will specifically be the same resolution, R101-22, referring to both these amendments and others within Fitchburg.
Y para finalizar la propuesta de la ciudad de Fitchburg, el día 24 de mayo, el Consejo decidirá cuáles rutas serían las finales.
And then, Mike, do you want to kind of talk about the Madison side of the final approval?
Sure. So on the Madison side, we will be presenting these draft amendments. We're finalizing them now, so we will be presenting them to the Transportation Policy and Planning Board on May 16th. Let me pull up my schedule here because there are a couple other meetings. We will then have another public information meeting about the project to go over the amendments and other things on May 19th. We will have a public hearing on the project on May 31st. And so then the approval process goes into June, where the amendments will be adopted in June at the Transportation Policy and Planning Board and Common Council. So you can find the information for these meetings again at the website. I'll just open it here again. mymetrobus.com. Oh, sorry. mymetrobus.com/redesign. Oh, here it is. So you can find out about those meetings at mymetrobus.com/redesign. Again, the important ones are May 19th is the next public meeting on the project. May 31st is the public hearing.
Queremos recordarles que hay más reuniones en el futuro, ya para el día 19 de mayo, el día 31 de mayo, para aprender más información sobre el rediseño en toda la ciudad de Madison y puede encontrar más documentos disponibles en nuestra página también.
Thank you all for coming. I'll let Chad close us out here.
Yes, I just want to thank you all for coming this evening and sharing your feedback. It is very valuable and helpful for us as we look at all of the potential impacts that the proposed route changes have and amendments and changes and, quite honestly, road projects that we could potentially do to help improve the situation as it's currently proposed. And allow all of you to be able to safely and effectively move through the Madison metro area using the transit system. I want to thank again Andrew McFadden for his work this evening. Thank you to our friends at Madison Metro, Alders Udell and Allen for attending the meeting. Also Doxa Church for allowing us to host, and our team here at Fact TV, as well as Lisa Sanford from the city here, who are all present this evening. So thank you, and we'll be hanging around for a few minutes afterwards if anyone wants to talk to us directly. Good night.